Alrighty, so before I begin this preview, I just want to quickly mention that I'm back on the road for these next couple of days. I'm going to be doing a couple of groundhog around the Midwest starting tomorrow in Minnesota. Now, usually when I'm on the road, that's usually kind of bad news when it comes to me trying to catch MLS action because usually I don't have a lot of times in terms of catching MLS action while I'm on the road. But the good news is tomorrow when I do get to Minnesota, which is going to be around 6 o'clock Central Time, I'm gonna just pretty much stay in the hotel and try to watch as much MLS action as possible. I'll probably watch 3 games at once, put two on my computer, put one on my phone. Probably you might even get a chance to see four if there's any Fox game, though. Unfortunately, I don't think there's going to be any games that's going to be on the Fox network. That is, and it makes sense because they're probably too busy in terms of broadcasting college football. But yeah, I will of course get a chance to watch some of these MLS games. But the other bad news is that when it comes to this week's action, MLS just have to put all the games that's going to be happening in that cramped Saturday night action, as we pretty much will have 15 games that will happen between the 7:30 p.m. Eastern time going all the way to midnight 30 p.m. Eastern time. And since I'm also going to be in the Central time, I'm going to be staying up late in terms of watching some of these games, including watching my team play because yeah, my team is not going to start until 9:30 Central Time, which I think that's probably the latest I've ever had to stay up in terms of watching my team play. Well, actually, that probably is not true, but it's definitely one of the later time, and it's something that I'm not used to in terms of watching my team play at that late of a window. But with that being said, let us begin by talking about these 15 games that's all going to be happening on Saturday. We start off with the 7:30 p.m. Eastern kickoff window. There's 6 games that's happening in this window. There's going to be 4 happening at the 8:30 p.m. Eastern kickoff window, and then the late West Coast games. There's going to be 5 that is going to happen. But starting off with the busy 7:30 p.m. Eastern window, starting off with New England versus Toronto FC. So while there are definitely some very interesting matchup this weekend, yeah, unfortunately, this is not one of them. I mean, I know that there are obviously some matchup this weekend that have a elimination stake, and I think in this game there is. I think Toronto they're pretty close in terms of getting themselves eliminated. In fact, there's a lot of teams that is up for elimination, including the Western Conference as well. This week will be the first time we see some of the team in the Western Conference will officially be eliminated, as both the Galaxy and St. Louis is up for elimination this week. But yeah, Toronto is another team to do so. They have a 5-10-13 record facing against a New England team that are probably heading to that direction as well, of an 8-7-14 record. I mean, I would say that this is kind of a desperation derby if this was maybe a couple of weeks ago, but it's got to a point where I think both of these teams are kind of in see you next season mode. So yeah, in a game like this, I mean, I don't expect a lot to happen, though. You know, this is kind of one of those games where when you have teams that is in see you next season mode, just as you think that maybe some players might have checked out for the season, that might not be true. I mean, some of these players they're gonna still play hard even in a game that doesn't have a lot of meaning left in the regular season. They're definitely gonna be fighting for their jobs heading into next season. So yeah, we'll see how this game, of course, will turn out. But in the all-time meeting, 13-10 in favor of the New England Revolution. Now, moving on, we got Montreal versus St. Louis. So this is actually the first ever meeting between both of these teams. Both of these teams have never met each other before. St. Louis 5-7-17. Again, they're another team that is up for elimination. They're facing against a Montreal side that's already eliminated from the playoffs. In fact, they were one of the first team to be eliminated. I think they were the second team to be eliminated from the playoffs with a 5-9-15 record. So yeah, another game that is kind of like the last one where it's kind of meaningless. It seems like there's not really much at stake. But again, I'm pretty sure both of these teams are still going to play hard because again, some of these players they're playing for their jobs heading into the next season, trying to impress their head coach or their interim head coach in the case of both of these teams. But yeah, you know we'll see how this of course would turn out. But now moving on in terms of match that maybe have a little bit more meaning. So I promise it will get a little better when it comes to some of these matchups. I mean, I talked about there are some very good matchup coming up, and some of them come in the late window that is. But yeah, we're just kind of getting some of the meaningless kind of boring games that doesn't have too much stake at first, and we move on to the next one, which is DC versus Orlando City. So DC 5-9-15. They also are eliminated from the playoffs. They were the first team to be eliminated from the playoffs. That is, Orlando is 13-8. and 7. All-time meeting 9-3 and 9 is the record. And when you look on paper, this should be a win for Orlando City. I mean, I know this team had some inconsistency before, but you got to say that if you're going to try to get yourself some home field advantage, which I think Orlando City is definitely playing for that, because there are still a bit of a battle when you look at the seeding in the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. This is a game that Orlando City's got to win, especially against the DC side that, like I said, they're pretty much checked out this season as well. And the only thing they can do is maybe play some spoiler against some of these teams that still have something to play for. And in the case of Orlando, playoff seeding. Now, moving on to a matchup that is much more interesting. Like I said, now we're starting to get to some of the more interesting matchup and some of the marquee matchup of this week. And believe me, we definitely have some marquee matchup this week as well. And this definitely is one of them. FC Cincinnati versus Nashville SC. Maybe a preview of a playoff matchup we might see either in the second round or in the later round. Cincinnati 16-4-9, and they're still chasing for the supporter shield standing. The same goes for Nashville SC as well. I mean, safe to say, you could say maybe this is a supporter shield 6-pointer, even though both of these teams are still a little bit off in terms of where the Union is at the top of the supporter shield standing. But in terms of the all-time meeting, 3-8-3 is the all-time meeting. There's been a lot of draws in the all-time meeting between both of these sides. So yeah, this should be very interesting to see how it's going to be. I mean, when you look at this game, who needs to win this the most? I mean, I know both of these teams needs to win, but I think you gotta say the pressure might be on Cincinnati more in this one compared to Nashville. Consider again, the problem for Cincinnati this season is that while they have done very well on the road and have got a lot of statement win on the road, at home it's been a struggle. At times this season at home they just haven't been good enough at home, and this is definitely a huge concern if you're Cincinnati heading into the playoffs, because if they're going to finish as one of the higher seed, most likely finish in the top three position, they're going to have home field advantage for some of the playoffs, and usually that's a good news for teams that have home field advantage in the playoffs. But when you cannot win those home games, then that is definitely a problem, and especially in this game against Nashville, a team that you might be playing against them in the playoffs at home. They need a statement win, and let's see whether or not if Cincinnati can do so. Now, moving on, we got Charlotte versus Inter Miami. So for Charlotte, they can do something that we haven't seen done in a couple of years, which is a 9-game winning streak. And what a way to try to tie the Seattle Sounders in terms of the longest winning streak in the modern era of MLS. And when I meant modern era, I mean post shootout era. That is, I know we had a team that is the LA Galaxy had, I think, 15 games winning streak, but that obviously happened during a time when they actually won some of those games in the shootout. So yeah, nowadays obviously those games would count more as a draw than a winning streak. But for Charlotte, they are looking to equal what the Seattle Sounders did back in 2018, go 9 games with all 9 games with a win and go on a 9-game winning streak. And if they're gonna do that and try to equal that record, you're gonna have to face one of the best team in the league, that is Inter Miami, that has a 13-7-5 record. I mentioned the Philadelphia Union are in a good position in the supporter shield, but don't forget about Miami. Miami has a lot of game in hand, and this is the first of what would be just a really packed schedule that Inter Miami is about to endure. I mentioned Inter Miami has so many games left in their season. They're going to be pretty much playing 3 games in 7 days, pretty much from now until near the end of the season. And their first big test is to go against the hottest team right now in MLS, winning 8 in a row. That is Charlotte FC with a 16-2-11 record. Charlotte is so hot right now that they have not only made up their ground in terms of at one point lingering down in the playoff bubble, to now pretty much back to where they were in the beginning of the season, which is challenging for one of the top spot in the Eastern Conference. But all-time meeting 4-2-2 in favor of Inter Miami. I expect this not only could be a good game, but they said that this game is going to be sold out. So this might be one of the biggest crowd that Charlotte would get. Probably 75,000 plus could show up. I think the record they had was like somewhere around that, and that was the opening night game against the Galaxy a couple of years ago. That is their first ever game in their club history at home. So there could be a chance that it could break that. And big part of that is because they get to see Messi and friends, but part of that is because this is just a marquee matchup, a matchup that, again, don't be surprised, just like I said about Cincinnati and Nashville, we might see that matchup in the playoffs. We might see a Charlotte versus Miami matchup in the playoff as well, and this should be very interesting to see if both of these teams are going to meet each other in the playoffs as well. Now, moving on, we got Atlanta versus the Columbus Crew. So a couple of years ago, this would have been a big matchup between both of these teams because both of these teams were very good a couple of years ago. And while one team is still pretty good, although, in the case of Columbus, even though I said that they're pretty good, they are on a bit of a downward trend right now. Having not won a game in the last five MLS regular season game against an Atlanta team that is pretty much almost at the end of what has been probably the most disappointing season that an MLS team has suffered this year with a 5-11-12 record. Columbus 12-10-6 is the record. All-time meeting 11-3-8 in favor of Columbus. And yeah, like I said, for Columbus, it's hard to believe how much things have kind of fall apart for this team in the past couple of games. Now, obviously, maybe a big part of that is because they're not really finishing that they need. They're still creating chances and at times playing some good brand of soccer, but because they don't really have the goal scorer and the goals are starting to kind of come hard by, and not to mention the defense haven't been as well under Will Fernandes doing this rough patch. Columbus needs to pick things up. I mean, this is a team that I mentioned before just a couple of weeks ago. This was supposed to be one of the teams that could be standing up to Miami, and we might even see a repeat of a Hell is Real derby in the later round of the playoffs. But now it seems like we could maybe see that in the early round. I mean, if we do see it in the early round, especially if you're FC Cincinnati, the last team you want to face in the early round is against Columbus, especially we know what happened last time when both of these teams faced off against each other in the playoffs. But yeah, for Columbus, they need to get things going, and one way to get things going is face against an Atlanta team that is just waiting for the season to end. This has just been a disastrous season to a point where yeah, they're pretty close to getting eliminated, and once they do officially get eliminated, I wonder what's going to be the future of Ronnie Delia because again, I'm surprised that he still has a job right now, considering the the expectation that he was set has been just completely not met, and he has been playing managing way below par, and Atlanta fans has been calling for his head for a while. But the front office is staying pat for now, and we'll see whether or not that can continue as even after Atlanta eliminated from the playoffs. Maybe they'll just probably fire him at the end of the season. That is. Now, moving on to the 8:30 p.m. Eastern kickoff is the San Jose Earthquakes versus LAFC. Now, originally was gonna go to this game, but because I'm gonna be on the road again, I'm not able to attend this one. And this game actually got pushed back an hour later. I have no idea why they decided to push this back an hour later, but nevertheless, it's now 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific between both of this team. The Quakes have a 9-8-12 record, whereas LAFC have an 11-8-7 record. And one thing I also want to mention is that the good news about this, even when this game is happening in September, is the fact that even though I know the football season has already started. I don't think there's going to be football lines that could be an issue. I mean, the 49ers have played a couple of preseason games at Levi Stadium, but it's been a while since they have. They still actually have not had their home opener yet. In fact, their home opener is actually next week where they play against Arizona. So I'm assuming the football lines might not be an issue in this one, and the turf might not be absolutely awful in this one. That was kind of my concern when I saw this game being played in September. I'm just thinking like, oh boy, this is happening during the football season, and I already know when we see games that is happening in the football season, how you can see those lines on the pitch. Yeah, that's going to be very very amateur, and I'll talk about in just a bit how I think this game is going to be played at Soldier Field as well. I wonder how the lines is going to be because the Bears have already played their season opener against the Vikings on Monday Night Football just a couple of days ago. But nevertheless, I don't think we're going to see the football lines being so egregious, and I think the turf will still probably hold firm. But nevertheless, the Quakes 9-8-12, they're going the wrong direction when it comes to their playoff hold. I mean, that loss against Austin, which I was there in person, yeah, it was not fun. It was not fun at all. And at the same time, I'm as much as it's not fun, I'm not surprised because I knew this was gonna happen. I'm just a bad luck charm whenever it goes to Quakes game. I'm over 5 now when I try to go to an away game that the Quakes, of course play. So blame me in terms of the reason why the Quakes lost in the last game. But LAFC have an 11-8-7 record, all-time meaning 13-1-7 in favor of LAFC. Now, on paper, you would think this could be a bit of a mismatch, but LAFC themselves, they haven't been playing relatively well either. I mean, ever since the signing of some Human, they have been kind of pedestrians when you look at how they have played. Now, we'll see whether or not that can change, and especially with the way that Sung Human, he's going to be fired up coming into this game. He scored two goals for this international break. Scored one against Mexico, scored one against the U.S. as well. So he's going to be a very competent man. But yeah, we'll see how LAFC will do in this game, and especially with the way that in the prior two times when the Quakes meet LAFC, both time LAFC lost those games, and those were not just bad LAFC team; those were actually really good LAFC team that were playing against the Quakes, including one meeting where they were actually unbeaten and were the last team to do so, to be unbeaten, only for the Quakes to knock them out in terms of that meeting. I wonder if that maybe has something to do with the pitch as well, because the pitch size is a little bit smaller at Levi Stadium compared to at BMO Stadium or at an MLS Stadium, and maybe that's kind of the style that LAFC likes to do in terms of playing in a bigger pitch. But nevertheless, for the Quakes, I mean, with the way that they have a really tough schedule to remain and they're fighting for their playoff life, you got to say this has to be a win, even if it's against LAFC. I mean, you have good history, at least in the last two meetings. You need to repeat that again if they want to make the playoffs, because if they lose this game, and with the way that teams behind them, even though teams behind them are kind of stumbling themselves, you keep that door open for teams behind them to try to get, and those teams are going to capitalize on those chances. So it's very important for the Quakes to win this one, and we'll see whether if they can do so. Now, moving on, we got Seattle versus the LA Galaxy. So this is a matchup that I'm pretty sure Galaxy fans are not looking forward to, because we all know what happened in the last two meeting between both of these teams, one in the Leeds Cup, one in the regular season as well. But nevertheless, Seattle have a 12-8-7 record. The Galaxy, they also are up for elimination as well. 4-8-16 is their record. All-time meeting 19-13-17 in favor of the Sounders, but lately it's been the Sounders that have the upper hand over the Galaxy. And I expect this might be the same case again. I mean, the Galaxy are pretty much checked out for the rest of the season. They really don't have anything to play for, and you can kind of tell because most of the games that the Galaxy have played ever since as they got that third place and got that CONCACAF Champions Cup berth heading into next season. They've been playing a bunch of kits heading into the latter part of the season, which means that I also think that we probably won't see Ricky Pooch for the rest of the season. I mean, I'm pretty sure Pooch probably is ready to go right now, but I can understand why Greg Vanny decided not to put him in, because why would you put him in these games that are kind of completely meaningless, and you risk the fact that if you put him back in, a guy coming off of a torn ACL, that's always a very risky thing to do, even if he is fully healed. So again, I expect the Galaxy are just kind of playing out of the string, but Seattle wouldn't care, because Seattle needs win. They want to get themselves home field advantage in the playoffs, and we'll see whether or not if they can do so. Especially they've been in a very good run of form lately. Now, moving on, we got FC Dallas versus Austin FC. So this, I believe, is the last Copa Tijas that we see between both of these teams. But Dallas have a 7-10-11 record. They're one of the teams that is fighting for playoff position. Austin are started to not only play much better lately, but they've really got themselves further away from the red line and built themselves some cushion with an 11-8-9 record. All-time meeting 7-3-3 in favor of FC Dallas. And it's actually important the fact that Austin built themselves a bit of a cushion, because they have had their struggle against FC Dallas. They have not played well whenever they play against Dallas. Dallas have started to be a little bit better lately. I mean, when I say a little bit better, I meant that they're still a little inconsistent, but they're definitely hanging in there. And especially, that game against St. Louis, that was a huge draw for them. The fact that they got outshot 41-5 in that one and still able to get a draw. Yeah, they're hanging in there when it comes to the playoff race, and they'll definitely hope to get a big win in this one to improve their chances of making the playoffs. But you gotta say that's the same case for Austin as well, because as much as Austin have built up a bit of a buffer and got two really big win in a row to move away from the red line, I mean, they can't just slip up straight away. The problem for Austin this season is that inconsistency has not been a thing for this team. There's been times where just as you thought that maybe things were going to go well, and then things go south again, and that's the last thing Los Verdes want to do, especially heading into the final month. Even with a bit of a cushion, it doesn't take much for that cushion to quickly disappear if they go on a bad run of form like they did near the middle of August, even heading into the end of August in that crucial playoff 6-pointer against the Quakes. Now, moving on, we got Chicago versus NYCFC, and let me just make sure I double check to see if this game is actually gonna take place at Soldier Field. I mean, the last couple of games has happened at SeatGeek Stadium because obviously with the Bears playing some of their games, obviously the Fire cannot play at Soldier Field as well. Let me take a look. Yeah, it is going to be at Soldier Field. I just checked the website site that is, and the good news with the Chicago Fire is they only got a couple more years left before I have to deal with the pain of Soldier Field. The same with NYCFC. They only have, I think, one more year left. I think next season is the last season that they're going to be playing at Yankee Stadium or whatever baseball field that they have in New York before moving into their new stadium. So that's kind of something at least both fan base can agree that we can finally move out of our atrocity multi-purpose stadium and actually play in a world-class soccer-specific stadium for once. But in this matchup, Chicago 12-6-10, whereas NYCFC is 13-5-9. And again, I would not be surprised if we're going to see some bad football lines. It's going to be a retro night, I would say, in this game where it's almost like we're back in the 2000s where we see MLS game taking place in NFL stadiums that has the football ball lines overlapping the soccer lines, and it's just going to be very amateur to see that happen. But in terms of the all-time meeting, 12-3-8 in favor of NYCFC. That all-time meeting used to be very bad. I mean, Chicago used to always struggle against NYCFC, but it's gone a little bit better, at least in the Chicago perspective. And by the way, as we speak, both of these teams are actually 8th and 9th, respectively. So if the playoffs started today, after this game is over, both of these teams will play against each other in the playing round. So you could say this might be a preview, at least in the playing round. Of course, if this, of course, is a preview of the playing round, this game, of course, will be taking place at Yankee Stadium with NYCFC getting that home field advantage in the playing round. So yeah, I'm pretty sure both of these teams would want to win, and they're still kind of battling in terms of who can maybe get home field advantage in the playing round as well. So we'll see who of course will do so in kind of a big I mean, would you call this a playoff 6-pointer when they're already in playoffs? I mean, they're well, I wouldn't say they're in the playoffs, but they're in a pretty good position in the playoffs right now. I think it is. I think both of these teams really want to get free points. Considered this could be a preview of what we will see later down the line where we could see this matchup in the wild card round in the Eastern Conference in just a bit. Now we get to the 9:30 starts. Starting off with RSL versus Sporting KC, and when I said 9:30 start, I mean 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. But this game will start at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time, 7:30. Pretty much every single game this week is gonna start at 7:30, except for the Seattle and the San Jose, and also the Vancouver game that starts in a special time. But yeah, in this game between RSL and Sporting KC, RSL 9-4-14, Sporting KC is 7-6-16. This is kind of a playoff 6-pointer with both of these teams still below the red line, though. In the case of Sporting KC, I mean their playoff hope is hanging onto a thread. RSL is still well and truly in this, but they need to get some wins. I mean, this is a team that have not done well when it comes to their recent form and kind of are heading in the wrong direction in terms of trying to make the playoffs rather than trying to get above the red line. But they have a 9-4-14 record. Sporting KC have a 7-6-16 record. All-time meeting 15-10-11 in favor of RSL. And also, just a reminder, this is a game between two teams that don't really like each other. I mean, there's tends to be a rivalry kind of matchup between both of these teams whenever they face off against each other, and especially with the way that both of these teams are kind of still in the playoff race and desperately need 3 points. I would not be surprised we might see that aggressiveness that could be shown between both of these teams because, like I said, both of these teams they do not like each other. They have some history with each other before. Now, moving on, we got Colorado versus the Houston Dynamo. So speaking of playoff six pointer, that's kind of the case at least in this one. Colorado, I believe they're currently eighth in the standing right now, where Houston, they are still kind of below the red line, but for the Houston Dynamo, that game against the Galaxy, what a killer blow that is to their playoff chances. They were just seconds away of getting all 3 points, a massive 3 points to help their playoff hope, and they dropped two crucial points that could come back to haunt them. But they have an 8-9-12 record. Colorado 10-6-13. This game starts the same time as the RSL versus Sporting KC game. All-time meaning 12-11-7 in favor of the Colorado Rapids. So yeah, again, another game between two teams that are kind of like right on the bubble. Whenever we see a matchup between teams that are in that logjam of a Western Conference playoff race, you might as well just say that it's kind of like a playoff 6-pointer, and I think this is going to be the case again between both of these teams. Now, moving on, we got Vancouver versus the Philadelphia Union. So now we started getting to some of the good games. Again, some of the marquee matchup between some teams that are near the top of the standings, and this definitely was is going to go down as one of them. Vancouver 14-7-6, whereas the Union, who leads the Supporters Shield standings, with a 17-6-6 record. This game actually, for whatever reason, listed 5 minutes past the other two games, so it has a very funky start time of 9:35 p.m. Eastern, 6:35 p.m. Pacific. I wouldn't be surprised if all three of these games probably just going to kick off at the same time. Now, in terms of the all-time meeting, 3-4-3 is the all-time meeting. Both of these teams haven't met each other in a while because it's an interconference matchup. But yeah, this should be a very interesting game. I mean, I know some people might even say that this could be a preview of MLS Cup in 2026. I mean, with the way how chaotic the East could be and also unpredictable the West could be at time, it's too early to call this maybe be a preview of MLS Cup, but it is a matchup between two really good team. I mean, it's a matchup between the top team in the Eastern Conference against a Vancouver side that's currently third place, but they can definitely get themselves into second position, and they're still within touching distance of San Diego because they do have a game over San Diego in terms of that top spot. So yeah, there's still a lot to fight for, and not to mention in terms of the supporter shield race, Vancouver is still within touching distance as well. So in many ways, it's kind of like a supporter shield 6-pointer between both of these teams in different conference, and we'll see who of course gets the better of it. And speaking of supporter shield 6-pointer, that's what the next game is going to be. Though this is kind of more built as the top of the West battle between San Diego and Minnesota. San Diego, of course, at the top of the Western Conference. And if San Diego can get a win in this one against Minnesota, they officially broke the record for the most point ever by an expansion team, and also broke the record for the most win an expansion team has ever had in MLS history. But if they're gonna have to do that, they're gonna have to do it against a Minnesota team that have a 14-9-6 record, as this game starts at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific. All-time meeting. San Diego, of course, winning the lone meeting. They won 4-2 against Minnesota a couple of months at Allianz. But again, this is a matchup that's kind of interesting because Minnesota, while there has been some hiccup from the Loons in the past couple of games. One thing that I am excited about the Loons is the fact that the new signings are finally started to implement. I believe Dominic Fitz did make the trip to San Diego. The same goes with that guy that we signed from Sunderland as well. Though Dominic Fitz most likely is probably gonna get some minutes, maybe coming off the bench as well, and pray some creativity on this team. But yeah, there's some exciting time as a Loons fan as we head to the playoffs, and this is also kind of a big statement kind of game for the Loons. I mean, if this is a team that is going to go deep into the playoffs, these are kind of the games that they're going to have to face, because I wouldn't be surprised if both of these teams can meet each other again in the playoffs. And especially, this is a game that I said this before back in that first ever meeting. I just feel like this game seems like could be favoring Minnesota because of the way that San Diego likes to have position. Minnesota is kind of the team that just doesn't like to have position. They like to go on the transitional attack, and when you have this kind of matchup, this feels like it's favoring Minnesota. Now, obviously, back in that matchup we saw at Allianz early this season, that didn't really quite work out for Minnesota, and mainly because they made some very uncharacteristic defensive mistake, which is something that I'm pretty sure Minnesota is going to have to limit, and especially they also want to make sure they try to limit Anders Dreyer as well, because Anders Dreyer, as I mentioned earlier in my video talk about MVP, yeah, he's definitely making his strong case this season, with him carrying his team literally on his back lately, because of the way that San Diego, this is a team that has kind of had their struggles when it comes to scoring goals, and their attack hasn't really been as electric as we've seen before in the beginning of the season. But it doesn't matter because this team has kind of rely on devil magic at times, and that's kind of the reason why they are one win away for getting the most point ever an expansion team has ever had, and also one win away of getting the most win that an expansion team has ever had, and are still keep within touching distance of the Union in terms of the supporter shield race as well. Now, last but not least, we got the Portland Timbers versus the New York Red Bulls. So this, I would say, is what we call the desperation derby of the week, mainly because, for the Portland Timbers, they have not been in a good run of form. They have been winless in the last 4 games. They haven't won a game since playing in the Leeds Cup. They're facing against a Red Bull side that are trying to not only keep their playoff hopes alive, but try not to end their longest active playoff streak that any team has ever had in MLS history alive with an 11-7-11 record. As this game will also start at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific. It's going to be very tough for me in terms of trying to keep an eye on all three of these games at the same time. I mean, on one hand, I'll definitely keep an eye on this game really closely because this game does involve my team, but I also want to watch this game as well because of the way that, yeah, I mean, this is between two of the better team in their respective conference, but also this is a matchup that could be a matchup that, like I said, it's a matchup that we have one team that, even though they are in a pretty comfortable spot in the playoff position, this winless run, I mean, it's kind of gone to a point where if you're the Timbers, that's you don't want to back yourself into the playoffs, because if you back yourself into the playoffs and not in a good run of form, yeah, it's probably going to be a very short-lived playoff journey for the Portland Timbers again, and that would really frustrate Timbers fan because they're probably kind of getting fed up years of exiting in the first round. I mean, they have I don't think they even have won a playoff round ever since they won MLS Cup. Or at least, actually, they didn't win MLS Cup, but they made it to MLS Cup back in 2021. Ultimately, lose in the final. That is, I might be wrong though. Timbers fan, feel free to correct me in the comments below. But the Red Bulls, of course, like I said, this is a team that, if they want to keep their streak alive, and trying to back themselves miraculously into the playoff again, they need to win road games. They simply have to win road game for the rest of the way, and this is an opportunity to do so because the Timbers are not in a good run of form. But it's not easy to do when this is a Red Bull side that has one of the worst road record in MLS this season. Only one win this season on the road, and not to mention only scoring 11 goals so far on the road this season. So yeah, somebody's gonna have to give in this game. This is a big game for both of these teams. One team trying to get themselves some momentum in the playoffs. The other, they're fighting for their playoff life. And if that is not going to be the case, this might be the first season in quite some while that we say the New York Red Bulls did not make it to the playoffs. It will feel weird to not see the Red Bulls make the playoffs, but I guess that's kind of what we said about the Seattle Sounders a couple of years ago. Remember how the Sounders didn't make the playoffs for the first time in their franchise history? I mean, it's kind of weird to say, but as the old saying goes, all good things eventually going to have to come to an end. All incredible streak will have to come to an end. Is this finally the first time we see the New York Red Bulls did not make it to the playoffs since 2009? And it's kind of quite fitting, the fact that if they do miss out on the playoffs this season, because it feels like it's deja vu all over again. Remember when they made it to MLS Cup back in 2008? Guess what happened the very next year? They missed the playoffs. Feels like history is repeating itself, where they made MLS Cup last year, and the price that they have to pay for making MLS Cup that year and finally getting to that stage is that they're probably going to miss out on the playoffs for the first time in over 15 years. But there you have it. That is pretty much it. Looking at all these games from match week number 33, if I'm not mistaken. I'm starting to lose track of what match week we are at. It also doesn't help the fact that I didn't even check before we get in to the after the international break, that is. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure to leave a like, smash the subscribe button. As always, let me know in the comments below what do you think of all of these games, and let me know in the comments your prediction for all of these games as well. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.